we're here trying to say, wake up, wake up, wake up. We really have to talk about this in honest ways if we're going to get through this with the more of our humanity. The earth will get through this. She's been through her changes before. We're making a decision of will. We're going to ride it out with her. Now, they tell me, my elders, that enough of us have raised our consciousness to the point that we are going to go through the keyhole into the new part of the story. But the road between here and there is going to be bumpy depending on the choices that we make all along that trail.
Hello, dear ones. We are currently in the festival of Navaratri, which is one of my favourite times of the year. It's the festival of the goddess, which happens twice a year and marks a 9-night epic battle and the mythology of the goddess Durga, who to me represents courage, the warrior, the activist, the fortress. Part of the celebration, especially of this fall Navaratri, is about inviting in the destruction, deep healing and transformation. It's always a very powerful time of year for me, and one that reminds me of the power of love being stronger than a love of power. Those of you that have studied with me know that I love to share the Hindu mythology, and you can listen to a recording from a few years ago of me sharing the Navaratri myth with some mantras on the gift page of my personal website, which is www.amisha.co.uk. This story is all about the goddesses Durga and Kali and this epic battle of discernment and strength and right timing. This month in Presence Collective, we are exploring the theme of eco-grief, including anxiety, and the upswell of panic coming from the recent media and some campaigns. I share my take on this and some practices in order to work with your grief and anxiety in a way where you can show up and be present to the times that we live in. If you want to join us, please head to our website and click on courses. It's a monthly membership, and you can also access just this month's theme if you prefer, as a mini course. I want to share this quote from Winona LaDuke. Someone needs to explain to me why wanting clean drinking water makes you an activist, and why proposing to destroy water with chemical warfare doesn't make a corporation a terrorist. This quote to me encapsulates the time that we live in, and how we're all being called to be activists, really for just wanting basic rights and connection to our land and to each other. Thank you as always to our patrons and the wonderful connection that we are sharing. One of our patrons, Claire, shared this in our WhatsApp group, which led to a lively and interesting discussion. I share it here with her permission, as from what others shared too, there seems to be an idea that we have to look to faraway cultures for our Indigenous elders. But wherever we are, there are people we can learn from who live in harmony with the land. She said, I've just listened to the episode with Raki App, such a clear expression of what we're facing. One of the many things he said which touched me was when he spoke about the urgent need to safeguard the rights of Indigenous people for themselves as human beings, and for their role as guardians of biodiversity. I've just visited my 91-year-old uncle, who was born and has lived his entire life on the border between Devon and Cornwall in the UK. He was apprenticed as a carpenter at the age of 14, and is still living in the house he went to at that age, the home of his teacher and his wife. He stayed with them until they both died, caring for them at home. My uncle knows how to care for the land, about how to ferment muck in the yard before spreading it on the fields, causing no damage to the soil or water contamination. He knows how to use a horse or very small tractor to protect the soil from being compacted. He knows how to plant protective plants around your crops to not use insecticides. He knows when to sow crops according to the moon. He used to know men down the pub who could tell you everything you needed to know about a horse by running their hands once down its side. He knows how to roll a cigarette perfectly. He ignores most of the medicines he is given by doctors whose grandfathers he's played with, and eats and drinks foods he was taught to take when he feels ill. He has a wealth of knowledge about living in harmony with his environment, the harvest of all the country women and men who came before him. He's a working class man with no influence and no pretensions. He is one of the millions that have gone before us, a precious resource ignored. I think he could be described as an Indigenous elder, and I think he and Raki would understand each other very well. This week's episode explores deeper the wisdom of Indigenous elders. I had the pleasure to interview this week's guest, Jyoti, at the Flourishing Diversity Summit that UCL hosted, which was a brilliant event. We had this conversation in a tiny dorm room, yet through her stories, we were transported through time and space. This happened again during the summit, where the grandmothers hosted a day and the lecture theatre was transformed into the most sacred space of healing and heart opening. Jyoti is an internationally renowned spiritual teacher. She has cultivated projects that demonstrate ways of life that honour the earth and all peoples. As a spiritual founder of the Centre for Sacred Studies, she co-founded Kayamari with spiritual communities both in America and Europe. Other projects she's helped to convene are the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers and the Unity Concert. She is the founder of The Fountain. Its mission is to restore an economic model that is based on reciprocity and collaboration, guided by nature and the sacred. She has devoted her life to bringing unity to the planet by facilitating the development of alliances between individuals who are the guardians of Indigenous culture and traditional medicine ways. Through this work, collaborative relationships with organizations that are focused on economic, social, and environmental solutions have developed, creatively addressing the global challenges of our times. In this episode, we explore the question, how can the wisdom held by Indigenous communities help humanity evolve and heal? I hope that you enjoy the conversation. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. Jyoti, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, I was so humbled when I got your invitation. I love the title of what you're putting out here for people. Stepping into a dream of a new future that's got harmony and justice for all and unity with all peoples. That's what my life's work's been about.
I would love to start by you sharing about the Council of the Indigenous Grandmothers and the work that you've been doing there and the incredible story of how all of that came together.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little more of a story.
Brilliant.
Because for me, there's a statement the Divine Mother is making through myself and our community, and I really don't know what it's going to say yet. So I'll back up and tell the story. In 1995, a bunch of people, my husband and I, his name is Russell Park, and I've been teaching globally over here, especially about spiritual emergence and the awakening people can go through, how misunderstood it was in our cultures, how it got misdiagnosed and really horrendous things happened to people. It was my work. That was our work, was really helping to catch these folks that were waking up. I'd gone through a rather tumultuous Kundalini awakening that lasted almost 13 years. It trained me up and got me ready for the work I would then do with spiritual emergence, but then the work that I would carry forward and what I'm doing now. So we've met people, and they wanted us to start a spiritual community. I didn't think I was old enough or wise enough or gray enough to take on such a task. So I went to 3 different teachers that were very wise ones, and ones that I know were no-nonsense teachers, if you know what I mean.
I do.
So I told them what was happening and said, I'm not sure I'm ready for this. What should I do? And they said, you're ready for this. My only requirement was, when I asked this question, is that one of them out of the three would say, no, Jyoti, you're not ready, and then I wouldn't go there. But none of them said this. So then it was, you take a deep breath when you ask a high teacher like this a question. You don't go out of a nonsensical reason, at least in the way I've been trained up. When you go ask a high teacher like this something, you go after you think about it a long time, because whatever comes out of that answer then is what you have to put in motion. You have a commitment on a whole nother spiritual level. At least it's my understanding. So now I have these three teachers, no nonsense teachers. They've all said, yes, it's time to do this. So we have no idea how to start a spiritual community. So we just started with our daily practice, which is stay in the moment. And we just followed what we needed to do. And we opened a community in 1995. We got led to an amazing 160-acre ranch on the tip top of a mountain. Have to go 14 miles up a logger road to get there. You had to really want to be there. Still do. Still have this place. We call it Crystal Mountain. And all of a sudden, it just started happening. It had its own life. It was very organic. So I would say the first part of the statement that the Mother was making through us was come together again as community that lives with the earth in sacred way. We wanted to step out of a throwaway society, and we wanted to step near the earth so we could hear how to live a different way of life for our children and their children. So our babies were birthed in my bathtub up on top of this mountain top. And now those young people are through college and into the world. We've been doing this for over 30 years. I have over 5 generations of people involved in our communities globally now. That's what it grew to. So community first. All languages, all people. Then in 1998, during ceremony, the Divine Mother came in a manifestation kind of form. And in this form, she came to me and she said, I'm going to give you one of my most precious baskets. And in this basket, I'm going to put some of my most treasured jewels. Those jewels represent lines of prayer that go back to the original times. Do not mix them. Do not change them. Protect and keep them safe. Walk them through the doorway of the millennia and hand them back to me. I have something we're going to do. Now, we didn't understand what any of this meant. But up our 14-mile logger road came these old ones to find us and initiate us into these different lines of prayer. That took us at one point. This was almost a decade worth of material that was going through. And also right before I went, the mission of the Grandmothers Council got really activated. Right before that 9/11 happened. That meant that the way we were taking care of earth-based ways of prayer and protecting them on our land, everything fell down in the United States. The Patriot Act got activated. So we had to we started a church called the Center for Sacred Studies so that we could protect these earth-based ways. We knew that there was precedence in the courts there with the Native American Church that would allow this to take place that way. So we were trying to do what we had been instructed to do.
And this was in Northern California?
It's in Northern California, yeah. The ranch where we landed and lived for 16 years was actually about an hour from Yosemite, up in the Sierra foothills there.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Now I live in Guerneville, which is 2 hours north of San Francisco, in the redwood trees. But that's another story. So, in any case, what happened then is my daughter-in-law, married to my youngest son, she was really being called to the boga. It was one of the 5 jewels in the basket. It was the last jewel, actually. I have a way of talking to the mother, and she lets me kind of let my little self kind of come out and box around with myself a bit, because it was like, Mom, we've gone through 4 initiations of lines. And when you lay down an altar in a family or a community like this, it shakes the tree of life. It shakes the karma all out, and you have to be able to withstand it, to burn that karma, not throw it around or make more, but to burn it so that you can really move closer to the dharmic situation that the teaching's been about. At least that's my training. Now, the community had grown from this 116 acres. It had gone out to live across different places in the United States, but also we had my daughter Bethany Yarrow has a place called the Waterfall House, and so we had a center there with particularly the things that we do to build alliance for Indigenous nations. And then we have a sister community in Switzerland, and we found land and have a large community outside of Prague it's 21 years old now. And until about a year and a half ago, we had a house in the Brazilian Amazon for 20 some odd years. So this was the footprint of Kayamari. This was the basket where the basket landed. And this was the people and the communities that would hold these missions, and we'd all work together to support what we've been asked to do. So my daughter-in-law was called towards the Iboga, and after I kind of bunched around with Mom and said, Divine Mother, and said, well, we did this, it's grounded, there are 4 of them. And I had been over teaching in Europe, and I usually take the train because I like to stay on the ground and I like to see the land. But someone had bought me a ticket. I tell you this story because you'll see how the mother works in my life. It'll demonstrate a little bit more. So I walked around. Now, I lived in Switzerland. I went to the Jung Institute and studied there for 3 years. And so I knew Switzerland. And one of the things I missed in Switzerland when I lived there was Black people and pickup trucks, because they have a soul of something that I missed there. It was just different. So when I walked around to go in to get my plane, there was a whole room of Black people. So very got my attention, and it said Gabon, Africa. Now, this was 2 years before I would go, that we met a woman, Bernadette Riboneau, that lived in Gabon, Africa. I got up and I said, you got me going the wrong place. I'm supposed to be going to Prague and from Zurich. And they said, well, don't worry. And I said, no, but you have my suitcase. And in my suitcase, you have all of my regalia and things I'm going to be teaching with and running ceremony for people's lives. I need my suitcase. I knew I was going to kill me. My suitcase went to Gabon, Africa. So it had my sacred fan in it, my tipi fan. And the remarkable thing is that when I would land in Gabon, Africa, several years later, to see it was, it's a place where chickens fly through and there's a lot of graft and there's a lot of things are not so safe sometimes. So that my suitcase sat for several months in Gabon, Africa, and flew back to me untouched with all my sacred objects untouched was also a statement. So now I'm back to arguing, complaining with Mother and trying to negotiate a little bit. And then she gets the voice she gets with me, this serious voice. Daughter, then no more time to mess around. And then she said, do you remember where your sacred fan, the ground it touched? Now your feet will stand there next. So the time was go to Gabon, Africa. So my daughter-in-law, through her studies of working with ibogaine and iboga as a treatment to addiction, had been in FDA-approved programs and insane kits, and she had done many studies, but she said, Mom, everything kind of comes short. Some of them have some spiritual things that they're putting into the mix of it all, but there's something missing. So I said, well, in my way, the way I was trained up, if you're going to work with a medicine that's not of your country, then we should go meet with the elders there. We should ask permission if it's okay to work with this medicine outside of this country. And if so, what are the ways that we should know so we can take care of it in the way that will regard it and respect it and the intelligence that it is. That led her, through many more stories, to Bernadette Riboneau. Dana wrote, it's my daughter-in-law, she made connection with Bernadette, and she was going to go for her initiation. My son went as the ambassador for peyote, because I have a family of alliance. And he wanted to go with his wife so he would know how to tend to her and her needs as she walked with a different medicine than he was trained with and knew. I went as their mom to support them. So we got there. In the more story, I ended up getting initiated with my children, which was a big process all by itself. In the middle of this first initiation, the medicine told me that I needed to go and tell Bernadette about this basket and the vision that I carried in the community that was surrounding it, tending to it. And so I did. And then when I did, she got quite animated and she said, I'm having a similar vision and it's time to get it in motion now. Now, she also had told me about a letter that she signed. She had been to meet with the ayahuascanderos in Peru. They had signed a letter with her that it was saying pretty much that the indigenous peoples of this planet came together in solidarity and to stand up and to reclaim their rights of guardianship. And that it was not okay for people to go into pharmacies, their pharmacies, into their jungles, and to take these medicines without permission, and to take them without the understanding and the teachings and the care that go along with these medicines. And that it was time now to reclaim this solidarity. She told me this. Many in my community had also been having visions. There are many visions around a mission like this. It brings us all to the mission that's shared by us all and validates when we hear the other visions that brought you, the other instruction from the divine that brings you to a certain pinnacle that then moves itself. And then you get to serve as it does so. I was on my way to the Amazon, where my home was down that way. So I left, went down there. They call me Joch there, Joch of the Peyote, because I brought the peyote into the Amazon, into this village where I have so many relations in Mopia, to meet with them for the first time. That's when some of the work that I do in regards to building alliances started to show itself, but I didn't even know that I was doing that at the time. I was just following divine instruction. So when I got there, they said, George, how did you go in Africa? And I told them what all happened there. And then I told them what had happened with Bernadette and the sharing of this vision and some of the visions of our community to see a council of elder women, grandmothers coming together. Some of the grandmothers that came out of Montpellier, Grandmother Claire, Grandmother Maria Lisi, Maria Lisi that year had signed a similar letter. And in that letter, they had signed it with 6 tribes in the Brazilian Amazon, the area of the Juruá regions down in there. So it felt timely, felt like it was something I was supposed to do. So then I went back home and I started to meditate, feeling a little overwhelmed by this. How in the world am I going to know what grandmothers the universe wants to come and sit at this council? And the mother said to me, you start with the seed of it all. The seed of it all is about relations. If you start there, then everything else unfolds naturally. Don't you worry. So I wrote a letter to all my community, and I said to them the story of what we're doing and what's happening. And go to your elders, ask them which grandmothers that they know that should be coming to this council. And out of that kind of action, I got the names of 16 people. So I sat down and I wrote this story, just saying exactly how it came and what we were being asked to do. I sent it to all these grandmothers, and 13 of them came to meet with us in Upper State, New York in 2004. Now, I thought when we all came together, I didn't know then that there was prophecy in many indigenous nations around the planet about the time when the 13 grandmothers would come to shake the world awake. I didn't know that at the time. It just was how Creator created. And we got to serve and witness. So When the grandmothers came together, I thought we were coming for one time. It took me 2 years with many other beautiful people helping to organize this. Lynn Shawaka particularly was at the head of helping me organize some of this at Minla, at the Dalai Lama's Medicine Buddha Retreat Center near Phoenicia, in Phoenicia, New York. When we came together, the grandmothers decided that they wanted to become the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers, and they decided that they wanted to get to know each other by going to each other's home places. And Grandmother Agnes said, girls, if we're going to get to know each other, we've got to meet each other's land and each other's peoples and customs. Let's do this a couple times a year. So I'm like, what? You can imagine. It took me 2 years to raise the monies for the first one. So all of a sudden there are two to do a year, plus take care of my community and the needs and the programs that go there to run all this. But by many, many miracles, and I could tell you many, many stories, it transpired from meetings that were smaller with about 150 people. The one in Phoenicia, I think, had about 300. Flor de Mayo had the next. She was the first grandmother that really jumped out there and initiated the grandmothers, hosting theirs and sponsoring their own. So we had about 150 at hers. We didn't charge a fee at that point. We ended up later having to have a tuition for people just because they grew, and there were many other demands on people and so forth that grew as they grew. So that it was about $250,000 each time they came together in the end. Somehow, by miracles, it happened. When we were on the way to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Grandmother Sering Gotong was hosting us at that time in Dharamsala. And we were about 6 weeks out. And I think it was $65,000, $70,000, something like that I still owed. We were just to break even. I was fretting about it and going through stuff and, intensity. And finally I got this instruction, which was this new mantra that I was to say. I am the Divine Mother. She lives in me. And everything she needs comes to me easily. And I can say it 2 more times, and your listeners, if they catch it 3 times, then it's their mantra, and they can use it every day too. It really works. I am the Divine Mother. She lives in me, and everything she needs comes to me easily. I am the Divine Mother. She lives in me, and everything she needs comes to me easily. You want to say it with me?
Yeah, I'd love to.
I am the Divine Mother. She lives in me, and everything she needs comes to me easily. So now that's your mantra. You can use it and pass it on. And it all happened. The last $10,000 I had to raise in the lobby of the hotel to pay the bill. But we got back home, and the grandmothers got to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama, all of his family, it was the oracle. I mean, it was a very amazing. Each gathering had its own beauty, its own mystique, its own mystery and teachings from the line of that grandmother and from the line that go back to those original times. So it was great teachings for us. About 2 years. And it was something that went around the world and woke up the grandmother archetype on this planet. Coming back to wisdom, now there are grandmother circles meeting in over 50 countries around the planet. 2 years before they would decide it was time for them to make their own way. We had walked with them almost a decade. And a couple of years before that happened, I got the next archetypal seed, because if anything, I think I'm a seed keeper. So these archetypal seeds, like our Kayamari community. Kayamari, the name of our community, we got it because 3 of us went away for 2 weeks. That was our task, to pick the name of our new community. And we hadn't met the Huichol yet. We didn't know about the blue deer of the Huichol, but we all came back with the name Cayamari as one of those 3 lists. So the name of our community became Cayamari, and we would discover that the land is the place where all the deer from all over come back together to breed and make more life. So Cayamari it was. So it's like those kind of things that weave in and out, through all of this story. So 2, I know I'm making a very long story to your question.
I love the story.
Okay. So I'm a story keeper. So anyway,
we don't need any other questions.
This new seed came, and it was called the Fountain. And its mission was to restore an economic model that is based on collaboration and reciprocity, guided by nature and the sacred. I didn't know what that one meant either when I caught it. You see, it takes time. My work is to hold that seed, protect it, and keep it safe so it can grow itself and pop itself open. And as it does, it starts to bring this organic understanding and intelligence. And if we can have patience and follow where it takes us, then we will get to something very authentic. Now, that's hard for people to do, particularly from the West. Indigenous people know how to do this. It's in their DNA. It's in their nature. That's what I have so much regard for. They've helped me remember, and they've helped me cultivate it in myself as well. And you put my Kundalini experience and my yogic self in here with some of this indigenous understanding, and then that was what became my compass points for my life. This seed came, and when they gave it to me, they said, "This will be the dot at the end of your sentence." I didn't know what that meant either. So I went to some of my elders. I said, "Well, does that mean that when I'm done with this, I'm really done and then I can go home?" And one of my elder grandmas, she bent her head back and laughed, and she said, "No, they'll just make a new sentence." So I don't know. But as I get into the fountain and the project that it is, because when it came, it was like, but I'm not an economist. I don't know these kinds of things. This is not, I can pray. But I don't know these kinds of things. But I came to understand that really in the original days, economy wasn't about money. Economy was about how we spend our life energies. So everybody was worth something. Everybody was valuable. Everybody came to the table with a currency. So maybe my currency was midwifery. Maybe your currency was healing. Maybe this one's currency was land that could help with the community projects. Maybe this one, so forth. And when you sit at this table and you collaborate, reciprocity lands because everything works naturally. And the circle of life feeds itself and serves itself and grows itself. All these things happen when there is full reciprocity. So I'm still learning. I'm still waking up to what the seed's potion is about, so to speak. And it's taking me some very interesting places. What's brought me to London, so I get to meet you today. Brought to the Flourishing Diversity Summit that is happening here with Indigenous peoples from all over the planet coming together in this very critical moment because we've got the lungs of the earth burning. We're going to wake up. I don't come to say we did something wrong and we need to fix it. I think this is keeping us trapped in an old way of understanding with life, For me, it's that we're in the 6th extinction of this earth. We're at the ending cycle. And now can we wake up enough to understand where we are and get attention to what we need to do to hold it, to walk through here in a good way? In India, when I went there, because I studied with the most amazing master, Dhyan Yogi, he still walks very closely with me. When the Kali Yuga was shown there, they'd have the clocks on the wall. And one from 12 to 1, it was 2,500-year cycle, and from 1 to 2 is a 2,500-year cycle, So it went 26,000-year cycles. And at the very end, the Kali Yuga, very little small slice of that. If they say it's the most difficult time that we have to walk, because it's the time when decay happens. It's the time when the systems all fall down and melt so that something new can pour out of it, and evolution can march us into the next 26,000 year cycle, and we're right there in the middle of that one. So, it's not going to be easy. The Kogi say to me that the ending is falling into the beginning. The beginning will roll out in 2026. It's not so far. And that the beginning will be rolled out by those individuals and organizations and initiatives that are based on original principle. Original principle is about heart and unity, collaboration, reciprocity. All life is sacred. A lot of my work right now, as I work for this new economy, is to bring that kind of teaching and ceremonial work into the mix of it all, so we can move with more consciousness and more kindness as we move through these times. So it's an interesting time. I'm very curious what the divine play is doing with us all. I've always been curious about that. It's probably what took me down the road.
It's interesting what you share about the sixth extinction, like it's happening, because sometimes there's this notion of, can we save that from happening?
No.
But I like that what you're sharing is it's more about how we walk through it.
Oh yeah, because see, this is the first attitude we've got to address. Our arrogance. It's kind of like, can I go in front of the big wave that's coming in and say to the tidal wave that's about to hit the island, stop? I don't think so. But we've got to come back to the understanding of power in nature. And we enter into a relationship that has something to do besides try to control our nature. Somebody told me one time, I don't know if these statistics are correct, so check me on them. But someone told me that like 80% of all this money in the West that we put out for insurance is so we can stay alive 6 weeks more. So we can fight death, so we don't have to look at death. I think it's the first thing we're going to have to embrace right now in the middle of this extinction. We're going to have to meet, what does death mean? What does our impermanence mean? And how do we live with impermanence with more humility? Death is, I had my first big teaching moment, I would say. My dad gave it to me when he died, because it was many years ago. I'm 71 years old now, so many years ago, before these books were written about the light and what happens in the afterlife that many have reported. But my dad died of cancer, and just as his dying moment, we left our bodies, and there was this grand light. And I watched my dad, he never looked back. I watched him walk right into that grand light, and then next thing I know, I was back in my body, and my dad's body was having this big reaction. It sat up in bed, and then it fell back down. But it would have freaked me out if I had not just seen where my dad went. But I knew where my dad went. And everything around death and the ideas that had been fostered in me about death, it all fell down at that moment. Because then I realized, that was Dad's bodysuit. It just fell down, this Dad's bodysuit. So I think we have to look at that place first and start to, I think right now on the planet, for instance, I think there's a lot of grief unconsciously that people are holding, grief for their histories, anger at these histories that got us here. Some of our histories and what we've done to one another are horrendous. Some of the stories that I could tell you are horrendous. But it's the end of those stories too, if we really step into this next place. So I think it's our work right now is to help move around the planet and try to hold these pieces of people's hearts while they're opening. And I also believe that our indigenous original cultures know how to walk through this. They have the prophecies that give us the instruction with how to walk through this. So if we can come all to the table right now with our different currencies, some have science, some have money, some have land, some have instructions and prophecies. I mean, some have a way of life that's going to have to change, and a way of life that supports life. That's where we're going. That's the moment we're in right now, I believe. I think that's what we're doing here in London, is trying to say, wake up, you can't keep talking about climate change as a joke. It's not a joke. We have glaciers. The first glacier melted now up in Iceland. They've put a marker on it because it's the first of 200 they say that are coming. You've got whales that they say bring the story and the song of the creation of this earth, and always have, that are coming up in your channels to try to wake up your populace here and say, wake up, there's a new story coming. It's kind of like I see the same denial experience in people that have been given a very serious disease diagnosis, where we kind of struggle with, I don't want to deal with that. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to die. All these things. But then finally, when you finally, the ones that make it through, the ones that are the miracle cures, the ones that have life grabs them and takes them a little further, those are the ones that say, okay, let's just get real. Let's get honest. What's going on here with my body? What do I need to do? What are the alternatives that I can do to treat this? There's a disease on this planet. It's called greed. It's driving horrendous situations, burning the lungs, that will creating clouds of smoke that I saw last night, and the sunsets are so red. That's the smoke that's going all across this Mother Earth. It's going to create climate changes. It's going to bring hurricanes that they can't explain, that they go to sleep over islands, churning 180 to 200 mile an hour winds that just happened in the Bahamas. For 46 hours, it stayed in one place. These things don't do this way. The weather herself is very dramatic and changing. So we're here trying to say, wake up, wake up, wake up. We really have to talk about this in honest ways if we're going to get through this with the more of our humanity. The earth will get through this.
Yeah, of course.
She's been through her changes before.
Yeah.
We're making a decision of we're going to ride it out with her. Now, they tell me, my elders, that enough of us have raised our consciousness to the point that we are going to go through the keyhole into the new part of the story. But the road between here and there is going to be bumpy depending on the choices that we make all along that trail. So that's what this old grandma is trying to do, is just say, hey, wake out of your sleep. There's something coming and we need to pay attention.
And can you share about some of the premonitions that they had? Like, I heard you speak once about how one of the grandmothers, like her grandmother, had told her that there would come a time that she would be called.
Yeah, you're talking about Grandma Rita Blumenstein. She's Yupik up in the coal country of Alaska. She's still with us. 3 of our grandmas on the council have passed. But Rita's still with us. She really is from the Star Nations. She's just she makes everyone laugh wherever she goes. But she told a story in New York when we first came together, and for me that again was another I look for the validations of things when I'm carrying them. I got some part in carrying them. And Rita said that when she was 9 years old, her grandmother sat her down and said, I'm going to give you a bundle. And in this bundle, there are 13 sacred stones and 13 white eagle plumes. I want you to watch after this bundle and care for it until you're old and gray like me, and then you're going to be invited to sit on a council of 13 grandmothers. When that time comes, you take these bundles and you pass it all around, keep one for yourself, and sit down and know that I'm going to be standing behind you. And so we were all weeping when she told us this. It's like when you're really trying to walk in a wakeful manner and trying to stay awake in your life's walk, things come to validate that you are on the right, that you're staying on the path, that you're not being distracted or your ego's not taking you away somehow. And these are the kinds of things that come when you're walking with some of the archetypal seeds that I'm talking about here. So we see all kinds of miracles. We see all kinds of validations. I have many stories we could spend many hours talking about. Maybe we should have Grandma fireside chats or something, I don't know, just to share some of these stories because they're so rich and they're so beautiful and they're so not about me. They're about the spirit of it all. You want another one of those stories? Or?
Yeah, why not?
Let me see what one.
I'll get the fire going.
You can get the fire going. I want to share about my granddaughter, a little more personal. And I have a granddaughter. I have 3 grandchildren. One's on the other side she went back home. And then I have her sister, Aaliyah, and my grandson, Jesse. Dylan was the one that went back home. She was a heart transplant child. She died when she was 5. She was born while I was in the midst of all of this with the grandmothers. In fact, one summer, my grandmother lap filled up with 2 of my grandkids that were born with, I have a younger son and older son, and they had children all at the same summer. So 3 weeks apart, these 2 are, and so they're very, very close. But Dylan was born, supposed to be born on Valentine's Day. And she came to really tell us about the heart and how significant the heart is. Before she was a year old, she had the Attorney General of California writing a proclamation for her life. She had the mayor of San Francisco declaring a Dylan Kiana Wicks Day to honor her, which happened to land on my grandson's birthday. She had CBS and the San Francisco Giants raising money for her. She had 34,000 hits on her Care Bridge, which was a website where people could go see how she was doing. She had 13 grandmothers praying for her in all different languages around the world, and she had the Dalai Lama's blessings sent to her. She was a force of nature to reckon with, not just because she was my grandchild, who was lucky and humbled to walk with this great being. But she survived a lot of things, and many times could have coded and left us. But she had something she wanted to do and did it, and then she was able to go back home. It was really to reactivate the heart, to remind our community that whatever trials or tribulations that we went through, we were always made through the relations of our heart. And so if we watered it, it would grow with us as we grew. She reminded us of that. I had our community committed to sitting with her for 1 week. We did not want her to open her eyes and see somebody she didn't know. We wanted her to be able to open her eyes and always see somebody she knew there. So for 1 year, 9 months of her first year of life, 24/7, there was somebody always at Dylan's hand from my community and family. 9 months, 24/7. We changed the culture in the heart transplant unit over in Stanford because normally people weren't there at night and things like that. And the babies are all very drugged up. And when you start hearing them cry, you know they're getting better and they can leave. So people talk over them, or we're talking over them. And we brought our healing tapes from the Dalai Lama and from some of our Native American church meetings and these holy sacred songs that played in her room all the time. So we created an atmosphere there that we hoped would induce her healing. We had aromatherapy, so we could burn different essences and oils in there. First, we got a little pushback from the medical team, and after a while, they were coming in to sit down in her room with her. One of them became one of our ministers of walking prayer from our community. And now, in rounds, they talk about how Dylan Wicks taught them how important of a medicine-loving family can be to the healing process. So she was involved in all of these pieces. When I was in her bedroom, I was there. I never left. I was over by my family for almost a year. So all of this stuff with the grandmothers and the working happened while many times I was the night shift nanny and she was sleeping. So then I could answer the emails and keep the movement for the grandmothers and some of the things that we were doing out on the planet. So Dylan was kind of the ghostwriter in all of that. She inspired me because I really don't have another aspiration except that I really think this creation is really remarkable. It's alive with itself. It's got magic in it if you look for it. It's got grounded firmness. If you put your feet there, you'll have it for yourself. And it's got the width of your imagination that it can birth. That's what this creation is that's all around us, huh? And I want my grandchildren to be able to have the experience of this creation. We keep going the way we are, and they won't. That's what this old grandma's doing on her pony.
Hello, this is Amisha. We are just taking a little break from the conversation here. On behalf of myself and the team, I want to say thank you for being part of creating a beautiful future. We make this for you so that we will all have the vision, wisdom, and activism we need at this time to weave a new narrative. Can you help us with this? You can do that by making a monthly donation to the podcast to cover our costs. Just the equivalent of a fair trade banana you might eat or a chai latte you might drink whilst you listen to this will make a huge difference to us. Head to www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community to become a monthly patron. And the other thing is to tell your friends about this podcast so they can tune in too. Send them a message or post on social media and let them know what you love about it. And whilst you're at it, leave us a review. And now, back to the conversation. Thank you for your loving beauty. So many of our friends that are listening, there's many that I'm in touch with and I kind of have a sense of who they are and what their lives are like. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the kind of community that you're talking about. The idea that someone would be there if they were sick every time they open their eyes. You know, for many people that I know in the world, like that's an impossibility. So much time is spent alone. And everything that you're saying makes complete sense to me around ways of living, the different currencies that we all have, and the different part that we all have to play and the listening that it involves to find that part. And then there's what can be the difficulty of living that way in a culture that isn't. Mm-hmm. Living that way where there isn't support and community that you feel that you're joining together with to hold this space for the bigger picture. Yeah, it can feel very isolating and it can feel very disconnected. Like you can feel a little bit like you're mad because you believe in something that is not mm-hmm. being mirrored anywhere that you look.
Don't you think I felt that?
Of course.
Like the spirit,
so I'm asking what you can share for everyone listening that feels that way. I totally
get it. I was a girl in the South when all of my spirit started waking up and getting restless and wanted to come out of the box. I was a girl in the South. I'm 71, like I said. You can imagine what it was like for a woman. Women were not supposed to be seen and not heard. That was our mantra. You must be seen but not heard. Huh? Many of my friends, when we started coming together to meet as women, we were beaten and one was murdered because it was so scary for women to come together. So we started having Tupperware parties because the men didn't mind if we were all coming together to talk about things about the kitchen. So we could have Tupperware parties, and then we could start being women together. Yeah, I know it's scary. I know what it's like to be isolated. I was also a woman that was thrown against walls. I went through my abuse doorway in order to come out of that place. I don't know what happened. You know, it's like, I heard a statement sometime, and I can't remember where I got this from, and I apologize because I really love to get credit when something inspires me like this, but I cannot remember where I read it. But it said when the soul is strong enough to hold its own numinosity, then and only then does it awaken. And so it's like,
I love that the door knocked as you said that next door.
This is my life. This is how it can react with you and dialogue with you if we allow it to, you know. We try not to control the environment. We allow the environment. It's a big difference. But to bring it back to where we were, you know, it's like part of the work of waking up is you wake up, spirit wakes some part of your consciousness up, and then you got to do a lot of cleaning. You got to do the purification, you got to do the cleaning, you got to stay with it, and you got to pay attention. And when you do, you're going to have everything's going to be brought to you that's going to assist you in this awakening process, that's going to change that idea that you have to be all alone in it. When you wake up, when I woke up, all of a sudden I realized, wow, look at this abuse that I'm in. Look at these ways that I'm being treated, I've been treated, I treat others. Look at how, do I want to be living in this? No, I do not. I want to wake up. I didn't know how. I didn't know what I was going to do. It was way back in the days before they had houses where women could go to and be protected. I had people lock me out of their homes because they were scared of this man that was chasing me down the street. I ended up going and working in the streets of Texas for 13 years with street kids. I really got into it. I went to look underneath the belly of this Western world, and I saw that there were these amazing spiritual mystics that we were calling juvenile delinquents that had survived horrendous stories. I wanted to know what that spirit was that was so strong. There was a curiosity in me that drove me forward. And those children are really what drew me forward. I wanted to learn what that spirit was about, but I wanted to see what could we do to make a different world. How can we move out of a world? I think right now, as crazy as the politics and everything is that's going on this planet, I think it's exactly what has to happen, because all the unseen goo and stuff that was in our cultures anyway is now getting very visible. And we have to look at it. The disease is actually trying to heal itself right now. If we can see it that way, we can use some of what we already have together in our own consciousness. That we have ways. We have ways to help cultures heal. We have ways to help people heal. Our community came together because we wanted to step out of the box of throwaway society. We didn't know what that meant, but we wanted our children to walk into a different culture. We wanted to live together and walk together for years. We're still walking together. We're almost 35 years old. And have we been messy? Waking up is messy. Bumping into things with your friends while you're waking up, yes, it's risky. And yes, you have to have a commitment to have the longevity, not the throwaway. Oh, that got hard, so I'll just throw it away. I won't let that relationship go. I'll start over again over here. I'll make a new me over here. Nobody will know what the old me was about. I don't think so. I think we really, really, really got to come to the table and have some honest, caring dialogues and create the world we really want to live in. Or we'll always just be saying the same things over and over. I can't do it. I'm all alone. You don't understand.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And then from that place, I guess the next question is, these next 7-8 years are key. They are the key.
They are the key.
And for me, I feel like, there's this growing sense of panic, which doesn't feel helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of confusion around what is the most grounded way to contribute to turning the key.
You can't look for the answer to that question outside yourself. It will require that you go to your own answer. I only came this way because I turned to the spirit inside myself and said, I want to know you. And when we embrace ourselves like that, something else bigger than who we are or who we think we are takes over. And it takes our life. And it goes towards our authenticity of presence. That I can tell you is so. I can tell you I witnessed it, and I have witnessed it in more than one person. It may not be the only answer to your question, but I know it is an answer to your question because I've witnessed it. I know that part is so. We don't turn to ourselves. One of my elders said to me the other day, we were talking, and I think if we have to come back here first and we have to love here first before we can turn around and love the world or anything else in it. Many times we think we're loving ourselves, but we really haven't forgiven ourselves for something. And that's the stick that won't let the door fly open. So I think we've got to turn around and go to the spirit that lives within. And really, when we do that, we will discover that there is an intelligence to this creation that will marvel you. Doesn't mean that sometimes when this intelligence instructs me to go somewhere, like to Gabon, Africa, that I will not want to go, that everything in me will not want to go, that I'll be terrified in me to go because I don't even know what I'm terrified about, but something feels like really big and I'm not sure I really want to go there. And fight and resist it all in myself. Absolutely, that's exactly correct. After a certain length of time, though, there is a deep, deep-seated trust that happens in that relationship with that intelligence. That I know that it's for the betterment of all. And if I can get beyond myself and do it, I will get to witness something beyond myself that brings goodness. That's all I know. I don't know much. But I know that. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
So we got to just get over ourselves. I think if we laugh about it more, we take ourselves very seriously. We just think we're very serious people. But I think if there's ways that we can just start to lighten up a little more.
Yeah.
I know it's hard right now. It's easy to say that, but it's hard because you turn on the TV and you see psychosis.
Everywhere. And
that's absolutely true.
And when you're trying to do something even like this, the psychosis is all around it. I've had actually somebody complain that I laugh too much on the show.
That you laugh too much?
Yeah, because
really,
because of the seriousness, I don't have the credibility because I'm laughing at serious issues, and of course I'm not laughing at them. I know that I know we need to cry when that feels right, and the grief part is part of it,
but you see,
but also the lightness is part of it too.
We also have to let go of our need to judge.
Yeah,
because what you're talking about is someone's caught in a judgment about something and a projection about something.
Yeah.
And then we all of a sudden take that projection in as our story, and then we swallow it, and it goes down and hits that place where the wound and the trigger was that we still needed to know about. Kubler-Ross says, I love this, and I found this to be very true too. She said, if I react to anything more than 15 seconds, I have unfinished homework there. So first of all, when something like this happens, I look to see where did the trigger go, because I want to find the trigger. Thank you very much for getting me to help me find my trigger, because I want these hooks gone. I want to be authentic in myself. I don't want to be asleep. You know, I found out it was really, really simple. Either you're conscious or you're unconscious. What I found out is in my walk in life, if you're unconscious, you do things that harm people. You step on things without meaning to. You hurt things without meaning to. When I discovered that, it was like, well, then, my goodness, I'm going to try to do the best I can to make me wake up, make me as conscious as I can be. That's a consciousness coming up.
Yeah.
When I'm projecting and when I'm judging something, that I'm throwing my ideas towards something, that's not conscious behavior. That's an unconscious behavior. I can share what my experience is. I can say, wow, when I hear the podcast, this is how I feel. I hear it inside. Is that how you wanted it to be? Then you might say, oh, no, it's not. But you see, that's a very different way of sharing about something. That's not coming at someone or throwing at someone. It's sitting down and sharing what our own experience was about without needing to get our experience validated by throwing it at somebody else. We've got to start looking at the ways we communicate or don't communicate with each other. I think over the periods of time, because of war, because of things that happen in life around us, it has enculturated us a certain way. And now we've really, all of us, we're at the generation where we all of us have to say, okay, then let's see, how have we been enculturated? What happened here? We have to understand it, but then we have to allow the story to be put down so we can start to find our own truth and stand within it. I don't think that's the only way to that place that you're in answer to your expression that you just gave me, but I do think that it's one way to get there.
Yeah. I mean, with that particular example, it didn't linger very long. It was, I sat with it because I wanted to check, am I doing a disservice? And I felt like, no, like we need some lightness because this is all very heavy information and it's a heavy time. And when that lightness is coming naturally, like I'm not going to manipulate it into something else. But I'm interested in you sharing about the laughter, because on one level, we're talking about a short span of time and a lot being on the table. And then we're talking about an inner process that can take a very long time.
The answer that wants to come up, I think it has to do with protocol. That's going to seem way outfield, right? But my Indigenous communities, what they have initiated me into and shared with me and taught me in, is the earth herself has given protocol with how to build our cultures. And we've lost our protocols in the West. We constructed new ones through our mind, but not from the earth herself. And when we followed those protocols she gave us, then we have a very different way of living amongst ourselves and with ourselves. That's what I've discovered. So I like to say a question like you're talking about here is a point of study that is a deep well of many things that will come to answer your question, because it's a really good study. We were just talking at dinner, the grandmas and I, last night. I'm now with many grandmas all over the planet. We were talking last night, and my dear sister Loretta Freda Bear Cook, she's Lakota, she was talking about this very thing, about protocol, about how significant it is, like rite of passage. We don't give rite of passage to the different places of our life as it changes, which we used to do and recognize in our villages. So we recognized when we were ready to be able to procreate in life. And we all went on our vision quests, and we went and sat with nature, and we sat with our spirit, and we came back knowing what we were supposed to do for the village, and it was everybody's job was sacred. Everybody was valued. But when we have that protocol, that's what happens there. So rite of passage. When we get to be older, and I get to be an old crone, there's a rite of passage for that we can recognize those different layers of life inside of ourselves. So with protocol then, there's times when I'm going to be in ceremony when I need to be in attention and I need to be serious. And there are times when I'm in a dialogue and there's an openness, and all the different feelings that may bubble up from a genuine and authentic conversation and dialogue should always be allowed at the table, even if someone in the room thinks that was incongruent somehow. The incongruency will also be something that teaches us. So that's why I say protocol, because then you really know how nature wants us to sit and be with these things, and there's a protocol that allows it. It always allows it. It doesn't restrict. Our rules restrict and control. Protocol establishes right container. I know that's kind of an off-the-wall way to answer your question, but I hope at least it touches a little bit differently than you thought it might.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a closing story or a little something?
I have a song. I like this song because I was told early on by Spirit that humility is necessary part of our walk if we want to be genuine in who we are. So the song is, you gotta bend down low in the eyes of the Creator. You gotta bend down low in the eyes of the Creator. You gotta humble yourself. You gotta humble yourself in the eyes of the Creator.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jyoti Ma, for all of your sharing today.
Absolutely. Thank you for allowing the stories to just kind of ravel and go around like a little bit of a swirly whoosh. I hope it touched somebody in their own story place, and that they can find some help there, our connection there, our validation for who they are. And I would also just like to say, believe in who you are. You are magnificent. We are made from the stars. And we're opening and lighting up our star matter right now in each and every one of us, so that my relatives up in Star Nation can look down and see heaven on earth. That's what we're really doing right now in the midst of all this craziness. Maybe that image will help a little bit.
Beautiful.
Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?